Tonight, we're continuing coverage of a WFXR News special report. This morning into the afternoon, we've been giving you live updates of the funeral for fallen officer Caleb Ogilvie. At the governor's order, flags are flying at half staff in respect and memory of Ogilvie, killed in the line of duty. So tonight, we'll start by taking a look at the last week and how we got to where we are today. It started Monday night when we learned about a deadly shooting at the Covington Farm and Fuel. Police say a man shot his stepfather, Randy Paxton, then ended up in a shootout with police. The crossfire costing both the shooter, Paxton, and Officer Ogilvie their lives. Not only did Officer Ogilvie serve under the Covington Police Department, before that he was a Marine and an EMT. The community rallied to honor him the next day with a makeshift memorial on top of Ogilvie's patrol unit. The community left flowers, balloons, and other tokens of remembrance. The next day, Covington Police Chief Christopher Smith held a press conference speaking of the loss for his department, calling Monday's shooting a senseless act of violence. Smith says this was the first death of an officer while responding to a call. He says he never thought he would experience this as a chief of police. And following Tuesday's press conference was Wednesday's procession. Law enforcement from many agencies honored Ogilvie with an escort from Roanoke to the Nicely's funeral home in Clifton Forge. Community members gathered on nearby streets to pay respects to the officer, his family, and fellow officers. On Thursday, new information was released about what happened when Officer Ogilvie was shot and killed. The Roanoke Medical Examiner's Office saying he was shot at least 4 times in the neck, torso, and extremities. Right now, we don't know who fired the fatal shots, but state police tell WFXR it will be a long process before any new information is released. And late Thursday night, the Covington City Council issued a statement on Monday's deaths, saying in part, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of Officer Caleb Ogilvie and Randy Paxton. Our law enforcement, emergency medical services, and the fire service community, the staff of Covington Farm and Fuel, and those who were fortunate enough to call these 2 precious men their friend." Covington City Council praised the love shown to these families, and first responders from all corners of our Commonwealth and beyond will give them some measure of comfort. Officer Ogilvie left behind 4 children. Multiple fundraisers have been formed to help support the family after losing their husband and father. In addition to GoFundMes organized by friends, the Covington Police Department, the department has a Fund the First drive with a goal of raising $50,000. A Florida nonprofit, Running for Heroes, also spearheading a campaign in his memory. Before his time as a police officer, Ogilvie was a former Marine, spending time in Iraq during the war in the Middle East. WFXR News talked with Terry Riley, who served alongside Ogilvie overseas. He says he was the kind of Marine who never hesitated to volunteer for a mission.
He loved serving his community. He became a police officer, something that a lot of us, a lot of us in the military, after the military, that's what people want to continue doing that and serving their community, and that's a great way to do it, and he was perfect for it.
Riley says after returning to the States, Ogilvie volunteered to help the folks in North Carolina after the area was hit by a tropical storm. He says he wasn't shocked at all when Ogilvie decided to become a police officer, saying it was the perfect fit. This morning, services for Officer Ogilvie were held at the Convention Center at Dabney's and at Lancaster Community College in Clifton Forge. Governor Glenn Youngkin, representatives from various agencies, and members of the community were all present in a show of unity for the families affected and the community rocked by violence. And WFXR News' Kathleen Stone and Damon Reynolds spent the day in Covington covering the entire event. They have more on how the Covington community remembers and honors Officer Ogilvie.
Amanda, I'm at Dabney S. Lancaster Community College, where Officer Ogilvie's funeral was held today. Hundreds of people attending. Law enforcement from across Virginia as well as West Virginia were here today. Even Governor Glenn Youngkin attended. WFXR's Damon Reynolds has what people had to say about Officer Ogilvie in today's funeral.
Well, it was an emotional day for the Ogilvie family and the hundreds of people who came out to show their support. Those close to him, like his wife, gave a heartfelt speech, while others shared their memories and stories about the kind of man he was. Natasha Ogilvie, the wife of the late officer, shared how dedicated her husband was to being an officer.
You guys really meant a lot to him.
But what made him even more special was the husband and father he was for his family.
He was an amazing father who could make an immaculate tea party spread. He didn't mind letting his little girls deck him out in makeup.
Even while working a job that required him to sacrifice so much, his daughters were most important to him.
And he would still see them off to school after working a 12-hour night shift.
Others who were close to him, like Chief Christopher Smith of the Covington Police Department, shared some of the funny memories he had of Caleb on the job, like when he was doing a routine stop.
Did you at least get a ticket out of it? And he said, no, sir. I said, what are you kidding me? You didn't even get a ticket out of it? I said, no, sir. I said, you better have a good reason why you didn't write a ticket. And he says, yes, sir. Well, what's your reason? There was another police officer.
Chief Smith says he always knew Caleb took pride in the job, especially when he witnessed him graduate the police academy.
He was so proud of becoming a police officer, and I could see it in his face.
Governor Glenn Youngkin took the time to thank Caleb for his sacrifice.
I don't have answers for you. What I know is a very brave man, made very important decisions, and he saved lives.
Natasha Ogilvie had one request to carry on her husband's legacy.
Don't waste a single moment of life. Thank a serviceman or an officer. Be kind to your neighbor and love one another, because we never know when our last impression is going to be made on the world.
There were over 50 agencies that came out to show their support for Caleb Ogilvie, including cars actually lined up outside of the service with flags raised and tears in their eyes. In Clifton Forge, Damon Reynolds, WFXR News.
Important thing to note is how strong the community support has been for Officer Ogilvie's family. That was one of the first things mentioned in today's funeral.
Also in Covington, community members are mourning another victim of Monday's shooting. 64-year-old Randall Paxton, the employee of Covington Farm and Fuel, shot and killed on Monday. Friends and family gathered to remember him this morning at Arrett Funeral Home.